live on Twitch and here on YouTube. Thank you for joining me. This is The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob, Season 5, 2019, Halloween Hootenanny. Tonight, Joe Bob is doing a Halloween special. He is going to be watching John Carpenter's Halloween 1 from 1978. You can also see the shirt that I'm wearing. Hold on, let me break the rules. You can see the shirt that I'm wearing. We are all ready to go. The night he came home. There you have it. We are ready for some Halloween. Let me switch over to the live feed here so everybody on Twitch can see what's going on as well. But there you have it. So, we do have some rules for this live stream. Unfortunately, because we cannot show the entire movie in its entirety, we are going to have to skip through the segments where they play the movie. But with that being said, we are still going to watch Joe Bob's review and see him talk about it when they take their segment breaks. So hopefully you guys still enjoy the episode. Hopefully it's a nice little treat and not a trick here for the Halloween season. We are getting right into it. Tonight, like I said, Joe Bob watching Halloween 1 from 1978, the John Carpenter version, the original version. We got some Monster Juice. This is the Aussie Lemonade. And this is The Last Drive-In, Joe Bob's Halloween special, the Halloween Hootenanny. Tonight, Joe Bob watching Halloween 1 from 1978, the original, John Carpenter's. So, ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves, thank you for joining me, and thank you for taking some time to spend your Halloween season with me. I will now let the man, the myth, the legend himself, Joe Bob, take it away. Okay, not allowed to play the intro theme. That's all right. Once the episode begins, we will unmute the audio and we will get right into it. So thank you again, guys, for joining me tonight. Hopefully you guys are all ready for spooky season. Libra season has arrived. Like I said, we're going to have to skip through the parts where they play the movie, but we will listen to Joe Bob. Here we go.
Hey, I'm Joe Bob Briggs, and I thought we'd do something a little different this Halloween. And wait a minute. What is this stuff over here? We are not doing jack-o'-lantern crap this year. That is for Halloween. We're in before Halloween season. What do you call that season? We're in pre-Halloween. Pre-ween. That's what we're in. We're in Days of the Dead. This is the time of year when you go down to Mexico and you feed nachos to dead people who wake up from their graves and they party with you. It's all about skulls and skeletons and that lady with the big mouth and the bad teeth. You know, Calavera Katrina, whatever. They have They have so much creepy mummy stuff down there that they have to divide it up into Dead Baby Day and Dead Grown-Up Day. Remember that James Bond film in 2015 where Daniel Craig goes down to Mexico and they have a Day of the Dead parade in Mexico City? When they made that film, there was no such thing as a Day of the Dead parade. They made that up for the movie. But then the next year, 2016, Mexico City started having the Day of the Dead parade. That's how much they love movies and dressing up like skeletons and zombies. So anyway, my point is, we're not set up for Day of the Dead here. It's not Halloween yet. Let's get some candy skull and some altars celebrating dead people and some nasty art direction, because we're not bobbing for apples out of season. Yuki, do you hear me, Yuki?
Yes.
Where are you? All right. Well, this is Joe Bob's Halloween Hootenanny, and we're about to launch into our first of 3 movies. And to guide us on that journey, as usual, we have Darcy the Mail Girl standing by to handle your tweets and your Instas and your Facebook posts and your emails. As soon as the movie starts, Darcy just goes insane on that social media until Twitter puts her in Twitter jail, and then we have to get her out. That's hashtag free Darcy when we're trying to get her out of Twitter. Twitter always thinks she's a bot. That's how fast she is. If she goes to Twitter jail, she'll be tweeting out of my account, which is the real Joe Bob. But normally she's at kinky_horror. And Darcy, you apparently didn't get the memo either. That's a great costume, but it's not Mexican. We are going Mexican here. We're doing the Mexican thing. People used to go to the border towns just to celebrate Days of the Dead, but now they're afraid now, if you cross over at Matamoros or Ciudad Acuña or Juarez or Nuevo Laredo, or my personal favorite border town actually is Piedras Negras, because isn't that where they invented the nacho? I went to that restaurant. I think it was Piedras Negras where they invented the nacho. And I thought it was actually a boring nacho, to tell you the truth, but I digress. Nobody goes down there anymore because they're afraid those new Border Patrol guys won't let you back in the country. You normally don't need a passport to walk into Mexico, but these new guys, they'll refuse you entry back into the U.S. just for liking Mexico, just for being friendly to Mexico, which is another reason we should be putting on some guayaberas this time of year and doing the Mexican hat dance and doing the Day of the Dead season, because none of you guys are on board with this, are you? You just, well, I'll tell you what, the other thing you can do at Halloween is you can head north across the other border to Niagara Falls, haunted house capital of the world. I've talked about that before. What other city has 7 giant haunted houses within walking distance? Niagara Falls, Canada, greatest tourist city in the world. There are 10 rules of tourism, and Niagara Falls is a perfect 10 in all 10 categories. Niagara Falls is the only city in the world to score a perfect 100 in tourism. I'm in awe of Niagara Falls. Not the actual falls. Sure, that's intriguing for about 5 minutes. You stand by that railing and you stare down into the churning, misty canyon and you wonder what it'd be like to kill yourself. I've done that. But no, what I'm talking about is the Canadian city of Niagara Falls, where they have a neighborhood called, quote, the Street of Fun. Anybody who uses the phrase street of fun in a non-ironic way to promote tourism, they are throwing down on you. They are so self-confident that they've co-opted the very word fun as their own property. Like they're saying, you think you've experienced fun? Yeah? Real fun? You know what fun is? We got your fun right here, pal. So anyway, I wrote a detailed tribute to Niagara Falls going over the 10 ways it wins the Super Bowl of tourism. Just write to me at joebob@joebobbriggs.com. I'll send you that article. But anyway, oh hell, you know what? I'm just going to say it because very quick, we're a streaming service, right? We have no time limits. I can do anything. Well, anyway, the way I proved it scientifically is there are 10 standards for stuff that people only do on vacation. Number 1, Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum. Niagara Falls has one of the biggest ones in the world. 2, there must be fudge. They have 3 fudge stores, 3 wax figures. You must have effigies of people made out of wax. They don't have a Madame Tussauds in Niagara Falls. They have the rare Louis Tussauds Museum. Louis Tussauds was Madame Tussauds' slacker great-grandson trying to cash in on the name. So they have an Arnold Schwarzenegger in that museum. He looks like a constipated Robert Goulet. It's well worth the price of admission. All right. Numero 40, great tourist towns need a live entertainment venue featuring acts that haven't been seen on primetime TV for at least 2 decades. 2 words for you people. Herman's Hermits. They're right there in Niagara Falls. Number 5, you must have a resident internationally famous magician who is not internationally famous. Welcome to the Greg Fruin Dinner Theater. Greg dresses all in black, works with Siberian tigers, and levitates a hot body all-female dance team. Yes! Number 6, there must be a water park overrun with screeching children. They have 3 of them in Niagara Falls. One of them is all indoors, so you can go there in the winter. Number 7, and this one is very important. Listen to this. You must have either a boat, a train, a monorail, or a ski lift that goes to nowhere. So Niagara Falls has this boat called Maid of the Mist that travels about 1,000 feet from the dock to the edge of the falls, just far enough for everybody to get wet and take home a souvenir raincoat. All right, number 8, there must be a long-running IMAX film that sucks but has its own permanent theater. Check, they got one. Number 9, you must believe that being a tourist in this town is part of honoring God, country, and mankind. And you will not believe how many people come home from Niagara Falls wearing Royal Canadian Mounted Police hats. And finally, there must be a haunted house. That's my point. Niagara Falls has 7, count them, 7 permanent haunted houses. The one I would recommend, you should do all 7. But if you only have time for one, go to Screamer's House of Horror, the one where Freddy Krueger is standing outside on the street. And then once you get inside, hissing snakes wrap themselves around your legs, and you watch your own severed arm crash to the floor as Jason Voorhees materializes in front of you, clutching a machete. Trained nurses are standing by. I call that, by God, entertainment. Okay. That's enough on Mexico and Canada. I know why I'm doing that. We're gonna do Canada at Christmas, I think, right? We're doing Canada at Christmas. And Mexico. We keep talking about doing those masked wrestler movies. I would love to have some of those things on. We should also do the UK. You know, Shudder is in the UK. We're on there. Hammer Films. You know, we'll do Hammer Films. But tonight, we're doing 3 American flicks. And the first one is kind of a forgotten gem from 1978. I think this movie got ignored when it first came out because it just has such a generic title. It's just called Halloween. And it was made by a young director named, John Carpenter. And it stars a young woman who was cast in the lead because she was the daughter of Janet Leigh from Psycho. So low budget movie, derivative of a couple of previous horror movies. And what? Really? You think maybe our audience has seen this movie before? You know, it's just that it'd be kind of silly to show a movie called Halloween that everybody's already seen during the Halloween Hootenanny, right? So, I mean, there's 47,000 different ways you can do Halloween these days, especially in Detroit, where they have those fetish parties where you dress up like serial killers and actually stab one another to death. You know, actually, they really do celebrate Devil's Night in Detroit, the night before Halloween. They burn down houses. It's great. So I know people have choices on Halloween, and watching the original movie called Halloween at Halloween is so on the nose that we might be boring tonight, especially since the 2018 sequel that made $255 million or some fuck already came out. But I'm always surprised when people want me to show movies that they've already seen 12 times. But this is one of those movies we always get requests for, so here goes, all right? And it's actually hard to talk about this movie because everybody already knows so much about it. So I'm going to give you some very, very, very obscure factoids that might help you enjoy it, even if you're the ultimate Halloween fanboy or fangirl. First of all, a lot of claims are made for Halloween, usually that it was the first this or the first that. It was not really the first anything. For example, a lot of the articles about Jamie Lee Curtis that are circulating this week, they say she was the first final girl. She wasn't the first, second, third, or fourth final girl. The more famous one at the time was Marilyn Burns in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That movie came out 4 years before this. It's said that this was the first horror film to make huge box office. 40 million domestic, 70 million worldwide. But once again, Texas Chainsaw Massacre made more than that. But the reason people don't know that is that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was owned by the mafia, and they don't open their books a lot, you know. In fact, it was owned by the Colombo family of New York City, specifically Butchie Perino and Joe the Whale Perino, the Perino brothers, known to their business associates as the Piranha Brothers, whose interests included bootlegging, protection rackets, prostitution, gambling, and indie films. So, at any rate, it took forensic accountants 30 years to figure out how much money the Colombo crime syndicate of Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, made on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but a lot more than Halloween. It's also sometimes stated that this was John Carpenter's first movie. It was actually his third movie. He made Dark Star as his student film at the University of Southern California. That was a sci-fi comedy. It had Dan O'Bannon in an acting role. And then he made Assault on Precinct 13, extremely low-budget gangs versus cops flick. That was 2 years before Halloween. He didn't set out to be a horror director. He showed no particular interest in horror before he was hired to do this film. He got the Halloween job because a producer named Irwin Yablans had a new company called Compass International Pictures, and he'd made a small profit with Assault on Precinct 13, so he wanted to work with Carpenter again. And he told him he wanted a horror film, and he wanted the film to be called The Babysitter Murders. And so, since he was offering more money for the budget than Carpenter had ever worked with, $325,000, the deal was made, and Carpenter put together the script along with his girlfriend at the time, Deborah Hill. Deborah would eventually become one of Hollywood's most powerful female producers. But Deborah had grown up in Haddonfield, New Jersey. Now, we have a lot of New Jerseyites in our audience, including the High Sheriff of Shudder, Craig Engler. He's from New Jersey. But Haddonfield is, if you're in downtown Camden, and you probably don't want to be in downtown Camden, but you just drive straight east until the houses become nicer and there aren't any abandoned cars on the street. Well, that's Haddonfield. So people in Haddonfield to this day claim that Halloween was made there, even though it clearly states that the town in the movie is Haddonfield, Illinois, which is not even a real place. And the actual filming location was not in Illinois either. They were in South Pasadena, California, which is the town that's been used for 100 years and 100 movies to represent small town Midwestern America. And while we're on that subject, many of the street names in Halloween are actually the street names in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is where John Carpenter grew up. So Haddonfield is actually a combination of New Jersey, Illinois, Kentucky, and California, which is very appropriate because it's supposed to be any town USA. So at any rate, my original point that I almost lost track of, but I'm remembering it now, is that Halloween exists because Irwin Yablans wanted a horror movie. And there had to be babysitters, and the babysitters had to die. Otherwise, he didn't care. Carpenter and Hill could do whatever they wanted. So what we end up with is a very simple story, extremely well told. It may be low budget, but it's ultimately a product of the mainstream Hollywood system because John Carpenter, he was born in New York State. He was way upstate in one of those towns where they have moose up there and bears and stuff. But he grew up in Bowling Green, and he was probably the only guy who ever left Bowling Green to study film. And he got his degree from the University of Southern California Film School, which was the best school in the country for film. All the great filmmakers of that era came out of there. So, and whenever I say that, people at NYU, at Tisch, they get upset, you know. But NYU wasn't really on Hollywood's radar in the late 60s, early 70s. That came later after Martin Scorsese made him famous. Okay, so my point is, John Carpenter came right out of the Hollywood film director factory. He made the movie in a long-time location that every Hollywood director works in at one time or another. He was working with young Hollywood professionals like Dean Cundey, the cinematographer, who would go on to be one of Hollywood's most in-demand camera guys. But at the time, he was known only for ultra-low-budget stuff like Ilsa, Harem Keeper of the Oil Sheiks, which I recommend, by the way, and Satan's Cheerleaders, and a couple of the more interesting black exploitation movies. So the reason I mentioned Dean Cundey, who would continue to work with Carpenter for years to come, is that he was using a new device called a Panaglide, which was a stabilizer that strapped onto your body, and you could walk with that huge monster of a 35 millimeter Panasonic camera and a gyroscope on it, and that would hold it level as you followed your subject. And it was a competitor of the Steadicam. A Steadicam wasn't used in a horror film until 1981 in the movie Wolfen, which I also recommend because hungry killer wolves roaming through the South Bronx. Who wouldn't love that? But with the Steadicam providing the wolf's eye views, that movie is great. Anyway, the reason I mentioned the Panaglide is that the opening shot of this movie is this long point of view scene, seen through the eyes of Michael Myers himself, and it would not have been possible if Cundy hadn't been experimenting with the Panaglide. So Dean Cundy copied the color scheme of the movie Chinatown when they made Halloween. Oranges and blues, orange tints for the day and blue backlighting for the nighttime. So one reason that Halloween was more popular, here's the point I'm making. One reason that Halloween was more popular than the other horror movies that came earlier, like Night of the Living Dead, is that it had that Hollywood shine. Most horror movies of that era, whether they were East Coast, West Coast, they were made by independents, so they had that grainy, shaky cam quality, and it scared people. You might think, well, that's good. They're horror movies. They should scare people. But they scared people in such a way that people who were living in the suburbs were afraid to go into the grindhouse theaters to see them. Or in the South, they were afraid to go to the drive-ins to see them because those were seedy places. They didn't have the appeal that they would have today. So the two most famous indie horror films prior to Halloween were Night of the Living Dead, made by unknowns in Pittsburgh, and Chainsaw, made by unknowns in Austin. So definitely outside the system, fighting for every ticket they sold. Halloween, on the other hand, was booked into your neighborhood multiplex. It premiered in Kansas City. How white bread can you get? And it promised an evening of controlled terror. You can be sure that while it was about a maniac, it was not made by a maniac. All right, that's all I'm going to say about it right now. I'll give you some more background at the next break, but let's look at those drive-in totals and kick off this Halloween Hootenanny. We have 5 dead bodies, 1 dead dog, 1 dilapidated spook house used today as a South Pasadena tourist attraction, 8 breasts, arm breasts, 4 jump scares, multiple strangulation, eye stabbing, multiple choking, meat cleaver wall pinning, neck slicing, random bullying with jack-o'-lantern vandalism, tombstone thievery, closet crashing, gratuitous footage from The Thing from Another World and Forbidden Planet, cleaver foo, heavy breathing foo, knitting needle foo, wire hanger foo, point of view camera foo, Drive-In Academy Award nominations. 4, Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis, the only person who knows the evil that walks among us. Jamie Lee Curtis for holding the fort until Dr. Loomis arrives, and John Carpenter, the writer-director who had no idea what he had created. 4 stars. Joe Bob says, check it out.
4 stars.
That was a long one, right? Dia de Muertos. Day of the Dead, people. Dia de Muertos. The Catholic Church tried to take that over, as a matter of fact. There's some saint now. It goes with Dia de Muertos. But it's really the festival of the Aztec goddess, Mictlantecuhtli. That's that skeleton lady who watches over the bones of the dead. She was flayed to death as an infant. They used to do that in Mexico. She is a pissed off, flayed baby with a fancy hat. She always has that fancy hat. Mictlantecuhtli. I don't know. Don't ask me to spell it. It's all consonants, 37 consonants, no vowels, But they take this stuff seriously in Mexico. There's no CGI in Mexico. They put this stuff right there in the church, And if you're disobedient, they flay you. It's 2019, though, so they no longer flay your baby. They will flay you. We should go down to the drive-in. Have you guys ever been to the drive-in? There's this restaurant in Matamoros, which is the border town across from Brownsville, Texas, called the Drive-In. It's not called the Drive-In because you can drive in. It's called the Drive-In because it's the only place with a parking lot. But they have 17,000 kinds of tequila at that place. And I've only tried about half of them so far. So anyway, I love Mexico. We can do tequila shots down there and talk about flayed babies. And they would not kick us out as they would in America. At the beginning of the movie, the very first thing you see, the point of view of the young boy Michael executing his first murder. It looks like it's one continuous take, and a lot of film critics have said it's one continuous take, but it's not. It switches when they get close to the bushes and they go from outdoors to indoors, and also when the mask goes on. But anyway, my point is that it's frequently compared to that killer point of view that opens Black Christmas. And I know we have a lot of Black Christmas fans, and Black Christmas was made 4 years earlier. And so people say, well, John Carpenter got all his ideas from Black Christmas. Canadians are especially quick to say that because Black Christmas is Canadian. But not really, because first of all, the purpose of the killer point of view tracking shot in Black Christmas was to disguise the identity of the killer. As soon as this tracking shot finishes, the camera just turns around and reveals young Michael with that bloody knife in his hand. So two opposite rationales for the shot, plus this point of view camera walks right past the boyfriend as he's coming down the stairs, indicating that Michael didn't really have to sneak into the house at all. It's his house, right? So why is he sneaking around? But anyway, when you're making a movie about a hands-on killer, the point of view camera is always spooky. That's the only thing that the two movies have in common, though. And by the way, I was talking to Darcy earlier today, and we have both noticed that a whole lot of guys cosplay Michael Myers at conventions. And some of them are so into the character that they will never take the mask off. They just sort of stand around looking menacing. And so we asked people on Twitter to send some of those in. And sure enough, we got a flood of them. Like, look at this guy. He not only has the mask and the knife, he's got the house. Joseph O'Brien of Toronto sent that in. And then he kind of cuts the menace with this second pic that he sent. He's copying a Nick Castle production still, actually, which Nick Castle himself recreated for the 2018 Halloween. But it doesn't really do anything for the character, but there you go. I'm always intrigued by the scene where Laurie Strode first encounters Michael Myers. She's sitting in the classroom, and she gets distracted because he's standing outside the window staring at her. But then she recovers, and she says, Costain wrote that fate was somehow related only to religion, whereas Samuels felt that fate was like a natural element, like earth, air, fire, and water. What kind of high school class is this? Like, she's staring at her fate. But I don't know who the hell Costain or Samuels are. Are they philosophers? I don't know who that is. Do they teach fate in high school? Very weird high school, very weird scene, but way memorable scene. John Carpenter always had a chip on his shoulder about this movie. Several critics did praise it, but he didn't pay any attention to those. He was always fixated on the bad reviews he got. And he was especially upset by Pauline Kael calling this movie silly. Years later, he was still defensive about it. I'm not sure why. Because most horror directors, they consider themselves rebels and they expect to get panned by the critics. But Carpenter was always angling for mainstream acceptance. And I think it's that USC thing. All his classmates were getting studio jobs, but Carpenter was making horror films for Compass International at a time when it was not cool to be making horror films. And by the way, I think Shudder has licensed every single film that Compass International ever made. The company didn't last that long. Irwin Blondes went out of business in the early 80s and went to work for Charles Band at Empire Pictures before they went out of business. But in the meantime, they made Tourist Trap, Nocturna, Hell Night, and the immortal Roller Boogie. I don't think Roller Boogie has been on Shudder, but the others have been on Shudder. All right, back to the movie, and then we'll get deeper into the mind of Michael Myers. Does he even have a mind? Does Michael Myers have a mind? Roll it. And Darcy, come over here for a minute. You know, this is all wrong, what you have on here. Here's what we're going for. We're going for something like this. You see this? We need scary. We need a scary up. We need to see skull.
I'll try to do better next time, sir.
Thank you. Halloween costumes. People think they can do whatever they want. They've gotten out of hand, you know. You know when it started? Started when people started doing Tanya Harding at Halloween. Right after that thing where Nancy Kerrigan gets her knees bashed in, you know. Then there was everybody doing the president, you know, everybody doing sexy zombie, you know, zombie in a miniskirt with bloody cleavage. And then we're going back to the basics here. Dead people. That's what we want. You know, they have a thing at Disney now called Mickey's Not Very Scary Halloween. Is that ridiculous or what? The whole point is scare the crap out of whoever opens the door, right? Be dead. Be Michael Myers. Be Linda Blair in Roller Boogie if you want to, but be the creepy Linda Blair in Roller Boogie. The Mexican people understand this. Don't make me say this again.
Like I said, guys, we do have to skip through the movie. Unfortunately, YouTube will not allow us to play the entire episode of the watch along. Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
So Michael Myers is all over town, but only Laurie sees him. That scene where the three girls are walking down the street, that was an improvised scene because the running time of the movie was too short. They needed to pad it. It's a very simple movie. Actually, Deborah Hill shot the scene. I guess John Carpenter was too busy with the Michael mask. And speaking of Michael Myers masks, these things are just pouring in now. Look at this one. These are both Insomniac Zach from the suburbs of Chicago. I love how much art direction they do with these photos. There was a guy at Creature Feature Weekend. You remember this? In Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. He actually stood in the bushes when he came out of the hotel. He never moved. He never broke character. He was just creepy as heck. Remember that guy?
Oh my God, yeah. He was amazing. And I went and told him, and he just stood there staring at me.
Like he was going to kill you, right?
Yes. But can I just say that I really hate this Day of the Dead idea?
It exists. We are in the Day of the Dead. It's not Halloween. It's Day of the Dead. It's Day of the Deadoween right now.
It's Halloween season, and Halloween should be fun.
Well, it will be fun. It's going to be very dark fun. That's what we're going to have. Okay. Indulge me in a couple of things here before we get back to the movie. The star of the movie, you will notice, not Jamie Lee Curtis, but Donald Pleasance. His name is billed above the title before even John Carpenter's name. Donald Pleasance had already been in dozens of films by the time this movie came out, almost always playing an evil killer. Most famously, he was the head of the Nazi SS in The Eagle Has Landed, and he was overqualified for that role because his RAF plane had been shot down over France in World War II, and he was actually tortured in a German POW camp. But that was not his most famous role. He was a theater guy, so his most famous role, and the role he was most proud of, was the scheming tramp in The Caretaker, which was a Harold Pinter play that debuted in London in 1960 and won all kinds of awards, including Best Actor in London's version of the Tonys. And it then moved to Broadway, where once again Donald Pleasance was acclaimed and honored and praised. So Pleasance was not a horror guy. Now, how many people in the Halloween Hootenanny audience have seen a Harold Pinter play? Probably 3. So wrong audience for Harold Pinter plays. But most people pretend that they know what's happening in Harold Pinter plays, but it's all subtext. And not only is it subtext, it's all British subtext. So Donald Pleasance was not on anybody's horror list, is my point. And John Carpenter wanted either Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee to play Dr. Loomis. But they both turned it down because the fee was only $25,000 and their fees were much higher. But John Carpenter admitted to actually being intimidated by Donald Pleasance because he was this high-toned theater guy. But Pleasance was trying to support his wife and his 6 daughters, and so he had to work all the time. So he took the movie for the low number, and he actually contributed a few things to the script involving his character because actually John Carpenter's story of how this happened was a little different. He said Donald Pleasance took the role because one of Donald Pleasance's daughters had liked the music in Assault on Precinct 13, but I don't buy that. I don't think that was the main reason he did the movie. Anyway, Donald Pleasance insisted that there could be no sympathy for Michael Myers, no backstory other than that he was unrepentant and unreachable. He was pure evil. And in fact, I think the reason that some of the Halloween sequels failed is that there was too much Michael Myers backstory, attempts to explain his motivation. Because Donald Pleasance was right. If you give reasons for his violence, he's much less scary. But Donald Pleasance also thought that the backstory for Dr. Loomis should be eliminated. So there was a scene where he calls his wife, and Pleasance asked that scene be taken out. Loomis had to be so single-minded that he had no family, no ties, no purpose other than stopping Michael Myers. He wanted him to be just as crazy as Michael. So here's what's interesting, though. Most of Donald Pleasance's scenes are with Charles Cyphers, who plays the sheriff in Haddonfield. And Charles Cyphers is in 3 other Carpenter films, including The Fog. But he was also a theater guy, and his most impressive achievement in his life, and the role he was most proud of, was playing the scheming tramp in The Caretaker in the Los Angeles production, a performance that won in the Los Angeles Drama Critics Award. So we have the 2 most famous Harold Pinter tramps doing scenes together. That is some serious insider acting stuff going on. All right. Laurie has just told herself to calm down. And you know what happens when anybody in a horror flick says calm down? That's right. We're going to paint the room red here pretty soon, aren't we? Roll the film. To this day, Jamie Lee Curtis says, I do not like horror movies. Even though she just finished doing the whole post-traumatic stress syndrome feminist sequel to replace all the 10 other sequels, plus she was in 2 or 3 of the previous sequels. John Carpenter always says he wanted her because her mom did Psycho, and he was a fan of Psycho. But Deborah Hill, who was dating John Carpenter at the time, says that Jamie Lee Curtis was not really his first choice, and the girl he really wanted was the daughter of the woman in Lassie. That was the whole description of the actress. He wanted that daughter of that woman in Lassie. So, the woman in Lassie was June Lockhart, and she has 2 daughters, but the only one who's an actress is Anne Lockhart, but I cannot for the life of me tell you anything that Anne Lockhart's been in.
Battlestar Galactica.
She's in Battlestar Galactica?
Yes.
Are you showing off?
Yes.
Are you still pissed about me making you change your costume?
Yes.
There's a shot from Halloween right there, 1978. We are, looks like 1 hour and 1 minute into the movie. Looks like Jamie Lee Curtis is getting ready to go do some babysitting. Now, I do just want to add 2 things before we continue with the watch along. The first one is a theory that I have. My theory on the Halloween movies is this, okay? And this theory has kind of been assaulted and debunked more recently with the Halloween Ends movie that they made, because this theory, if you listen to it, it makes sense to me, but apparently it didn't make sense to the people who made Halloween Ends more recently. But here it goes. Okay, my theory is that Michael Myers, the mask that he wears, the Michael Myers mask, obviously it's a William Shatner mask painted white, but my theory in the Halloween universe is that his mask is made by the Silver Shamrock Company. Okay, Silver Shamrock, obviously in Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, they made the witch, the pumpkin, and the skeleton mask that end up, dismembering and just eating alive all of the children who go out and wear it on Halloween night as soon as they watch that Silver Shamrock commercial. But for me, I think that the mask that Michael Myers wears is made by Silver Shamrock. Now, this has never been confirmed. This is just my theory, but I think the Michael Myers mask is actually made by Silver Shamrock, and I believe that when it's on Michael Myers, it actually gives him supernatural powers, okay? Obviously, in any horror movie, there is going to be an element of the supernatural, correct? In any horror movie that we watch, no matter how much I hate shit about ghosts and paranormal activity and whatnot, in any horror movie, there's always going to be an element to the supernatural. So, I think when Michael Myers himself puts on the mask, it gives him abilities that are absolutely superhuman, okay? He can do things that normal people cannot. Basically, what I'm saying is when Michael Myers has his mask, it's like Thor with his hammer, okay? It's not going to be effective the same way it would on anybody else. If somebody else tries to put on the mask, it's not going to have the same effect. Just like if somebody else is using Thor's hammer, they can't get away with it. But when Michael Myers specifically has the mask, that's when he's at his most dangerous. Okay, that's when he's at his most lethal. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about, obviously, you know, they killed Michael Myers in fucking Halloween Ends, which pissed me off. I thought Halloween Ends was like the worst Halloween movie because you can't fucking kill Michael Myers. We waited like 25 years to see Jamie Lee Curtis finally die, but that's another story. You ain't getting away that easy, Jamie Lee. All right? If it was my movie, it would have been done way differently. But here's the other thing, okay? Here's my other theory. I basically believe that the Halloween movies, the entire purpose of the movies is Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers, okay? And vice versa. Michael Myers versus Laurie Strode. It's the yin and the yang, if you will, okay? So the purpose of Laurie Strode in the Halloween movies is to kill Michael Myers. And the purpose of Michael Myers in the Halloween movies is to kill Laurie Strode. Now, they both can't manage to accomplish that, okay? In every single movie, one gets away from the other, or they just don't succeed in killing the other in general. And they always wanted the Halloween movies to add more backstory, or the sequels after Halloween 1, John Carpenter. Now, here's my thing, okay? I loved Halloween 1 and 2 because those are the ones that John Carpenter was most involved with. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, is not a bad movie. They were trying to do something different with the series. And like I said, I feel like that movie was created because it just adds to my theory of Michael Myers' mask and the Silver Shamrock Company. Halloween 4 and 5, I absolutely loved. They're some of my favorites. I love also Danielle Harris, who actually started in the Halloween franchise. Well, she did cut the head off on Michael Myers, but here's the thing, okay? When she cut off the head of Michael Myers actually, he made it look like the person that she killed was him. Okay, so he basically stole, I think it was a fireman's outfit. Like he was like in the paramedics, and when the paramedics were like carting him off to the ambulance, he basically killed one of the paramedics or the firefighters. He took the uniform that they were wearing and dressed the paramedic or the firefighter up in the Michael Myers gear. So Jamie Lee, Laurie Strode, had no idea who she killed. She thought she killed Michael Myers, but Michael Myers in the end actually got away. And that's another reason for my theory, is that nobody has the same effect as Michael Myers when he's wearing the mask. Okay? If that paramedic or that random ass firefighter was actually a serial killer, he probably would have been doing a lot more damage if he was really Michael Myers, but he's not. Yes. See, they actually explain after Halloween 2, there's the movie, I believe it's Halloween Resurrection, which is right after H2O. So if you go and watch Resurrection, they actually explain that, how all of that actually happened. So in H2O, they make it look like Jamie Lee actually did kill Michael Myers, but of course Michael Myers actually just got away. And then more recently in the trilogy, you know for a fact that Michael Myers is still alive, and so is the character Laurie Strode. So that just also kind of adds to my second theory of why the Halloween movies are more about the rivalry between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers, and them both actually trying to kill each other the entire time. But yeah, after Halloween H2O, if you go check out Halloween Resurrection, they actually explain that entire scenario, and they add more detail to it, probably better than I'm doing right now. But I do know for a fact Michael Myers was pretty much just impersonating the paramedic or the firefighters that were trying to like take him to the ambulance, and he basically did like a body switch type of thing where Laurie Strode had no idea who she killed. She thought she killed Michael Myers, but it was just a decoy. So I also, like I was saying, I love Halloween 4 and Halloween 5, which are also going to be movies that Joe Bob is going to watch here on The Last Drive-In Halloween Hootenanny. That's coming up after part 1. So the next time that we stream, we're going to do Halloween 4 with Joe Bob, and then after that, Halloween 5. I love Halloween 4 and 5. After that, I think that's when they did H2O. H2O is a pretty good movie, and as well as Resurrection. Resurrection isn't as loved as some of the other ones, but it still holds up, I think, to this day. And then you start to get into the Rob Zombie remakes. I actually think Rob Zombie did a fairly good job with the remakes. He was planning on doing a trilogy at first, but he only got to do 2 movies in the Halloween franchise because after the second movie, he was working with the Weinstein Company, and he absolutely had a fucking terrible time working with the Weinsteins and trying to get those Halloween movies out. I think he actually did a fairly decent job on the Halloween remakes. I love Rob Zombie as a horror director. So Halloween 1 and 2, I think are, they're underappreciated in some kind of respect. No, Resurrection was not produced by Rob Zombie. I think Resurrection is actually the one with Busta Rhymes. It's the one where they try to turn the Myers house into like a television show, like they're doing some kind of like webcam show. And they take like 6-7 people, they put them in the Myers house for a night, and they basically have no idea that Michael Myers is still alive. And it's actually, it has Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks in it. And at the end of the movie, Busta Rhymes gets to square up with Michael Myers. It's actually really funny because he's one of the only people that's actually probably put a whooping on Michael Myers that badly. So yeah, go check out Resurrection if you haven't, because Rob Zombie only made the remakes. He basically did his first version of Halloween and then the sequel to it, Halloween 2. But basically what I'm saying is, in Rob Zombie's Halloween universe, the only thing that he wanted to do differently, and he even said this in interviews, he just wanted to add more backstory to Michael as a child and how Michael grew up. And that's why you see how dysfunctional his life was as a kid, what happened with his mom. And then obviously that kind of carries over into Halloween 2 with like the white horse and stuff. And then never got to do a third part in the trilogy that he wanted to do because he just had a very terrible time after Halloween 2. Did not have any fun with Halloween 2. Did not want to continue on to a third movie. So that was pretty much the end of that. I do think Danielle Harris came back for the Rob Zombie remakes as well. I love always seeing Danielle Harris involved with the Halloween movies. She's like just a fan favorite in the Halloween universe as well. Up there with Jamie Lee Curtis, I would say. I know she wasn't Laurie Strode, but she was Laurie's one friend in the Rob Zombie remakes. And basically after the Rob Zombie remakes, you just have the more recent trilogy that came out like 2018 and more of like the 2020s. So Halloween 2018 was pretty good. I thought it was actually a decent movie. Halloween Kills was also pretty enjoyable. I think that was okay. But Halloween Ends has to be like the worst fucking movie in the Halloween franchise I've ever seen. It's just terrible. You can't kill Michael Myers, okay? Jamie Lee, you're not getting away that easy. I'm not hearing it, Laurie Strode. All right, guys, we're going to keep going here with Joe Bob's review. We're going to keep the watch along going. Thank you a lot for those comments as well, Space Ghost. I appreciate you hanging out and chatting tonight. Okay, and we're back with Joe Bob. So let's hear what Joe Bob has to say.
Look at this guy. Surfer Michael Myers. His name is Lito Velasco from LA. He likes to call himself Shape of Fear Cosplay because originally the credit for Michael Myers was The Shape. Here he is looking a little more menacing. Michael Myers is listed in the credits as Tony Moran, but he was actually portrayed by 5 different people, whoever was available to slap on the mask or show a part of his body in any particular scene. The reason they list Tony Moran is that's him in that brief shot where he's unmasked Otherwise, he's always wearing that cheap mask that they threw together. It's actually a Captain Kirk mask that has the sideburns and the eyebrows ripped off of it. The face is painted white, the hair is painted brown, and the eyes are made whiter on the Captain Kirk mask. Total cost of the mask effects, $2. Maybe that's why there's so many cosplayers today. Minimal investment. Most of you know all about the rest of the cast. Jamie Lee Curtis, who was hired because Carpenter admired Hitchcock's scene featuring her mother in...
Hey, Space Ghost, I definitely appreciate that. Yeah, at the time, Halloween Resurrection wasn't really the best movie in the series at the time. But looking back on it now, a few years later, it definitely holds up, like I said. It's kind of like a strange concept for a Halloween movie because, again, they basically just turned it into like a webcam kind of found footage style Halloween movie. But at the same time, if you're looking to do like a Halloween marathon, I would include Resurrection in there just because it's still kind of a fun watch. It's definitely better than fucking Halloween Ends, in my opinion. So I would definitely say that Resurrection is okay. Looking back, years later, is it the best Halloween movie? Probably not. But like I said, if you're planning on doing some kind of a Halloween marathon, you could throw it in there just for shits and giggles. But definitely appreciate you hanging out, man.
Psycho. She went on to a weird career. Big budget movies, Trading Places, low budget movies, Prom Night, Activia commercials, indie comedies, A Fish Called Wanda, just all over the lot. Remember that aerobics movie with John Travolta? Perfect. Woo! Pretty much killed fitness club drama for all time. Nancy Loomis, she gets third billing. Annie the Babysitter, she made 5 John Carpenter films, but that was it for her. She's a sculptor in L.A. PJ Souls, best known for Stripes and Rock and Roll High School. She had several small roles before Halloween, and then one big role in Bloodbath. But this was her breakout role as the sex-crazed cheerleader. Lindsay, the young girl who's supposed to be watched by Annie, but she gets pawned off on Jamie Lee Curtis. She would grow up to be on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. That's Kyle Richards. And even more impressive, Sandy Johnson, who plays Michael Myers' sister, Judith Myers, in the opening scene, would go on to star in the amazing Gas Pump Girls. So John Carpenter got $10,000 for making this movie, but he also got 10% of the profits. So good deal for him because it created artistic freedom for the rest of his life. All right. We're interrupting this movie too much. We're tearing this movie up. So let's just get back to the movie. I wonder why they never remade Gas Pump Girls. Because it's such an uplifting story. I mean, we need more stories like that in these perilous times. You can do Gas Pump Girls 40 years later, just like they did the Halloween sequel that way. She just comes back as a grandmother, right? So same thing. Topless grandmothers working at a gas station. Or you could just remake it with 18-year-old girls. Either way would work. Kirsten Baker. Hadn't thought of her in a while. Star of Gas Pump Girls. And Friday the 13th Part 2 as Terry the Tomboy Girl. So where are you, Kirsten? We need you, Kirsten. You saved Hunts Hall's gas station. You can do it again. But mainly you can assure us that an all-American story like Gas Pump Girls can survive in this era, because you had both elements working in that story. You had the gas pump and you had the girls. So hybrid.
How now, cried Arthur.
There's a little shot of the movie for you. Jamie Lee now getting her babysitter on. So we are approaching damn near the end of the movie now, pretty much. But like I said, guys, unfortunately can't show the movie because YouTube copyright sucks. So maybe one year we'll be able to get away with it. I do hope that eventually we can do an entire watch along and we actually get to sit down and enjoy the full movie together. But right now, YouTube just isn't going to allow that sort of thing. So we're just going to listen to Joe Bob talk about it, which is still pretty entertaining.
For a movie that started out with the title The Babysitter Murders, it sure does take a long time to kill the first babysitter. That was a long tease. You think she's going to get it in the house, in the laundry room? When she's stuck in that window, she keeps not getting killed by Michael Myers. And speaking of Michael Myers, take a look at Michelle Myers, a female Michael Myers impersonator who sent us this excellent photo from Tucson, Arizona, the first Michael Myers with cleavage that I know of. We've opened the floodgates on this thing, you know. A female Michael Myers, that would be a very interesting remake, though.
He is a legend. He definitely is a legend. I've been watching Joe Bob ever since Monster Vision on TNT, so I definitely grew up watching a lot of his movie reviews and stuff. I'm actually subscribed to the Shudder Network here, and Shudder is how we are watching all of these Joe Bob Last Drive-In series episodes. Right now, we're in October, so we just finished doing an entire season in September. Every month, I try to do something special with Joe Bob, so since it's October, we're pretty much doing all of his Halloween specials, and this is the first episode in the Halloween specials, so I think after this, there's going to be 6 more streams, and like I said, tonight, Joe Bob is watching the movie Halloween 1, 1978, and then after this, in the Halloween Hootenanny, he's also going to do Halloween 4 and Halloween 5. And down the line, there's some other ones, but I pretty much know right around Halloween, I think on October, maybe the 28th. So a little bit later in the month, we're actually going to watch All Hallows Eve. And if you know anything about me, you know I also love the Terrifier movies. I love Terrifier movies. I love Damien Leone. He's a great horror director as well. So around October 28th, that's going to be the final episode in the Joe Bob Halloween specials, and it'll end with All Hallows Eve, which is pretty much the beginning to Art the Clown in the Terrifier series. Yeah, man, he's been around for a while. He's definitely been around for a while. It's really cool. If if you actually take a look at my channel, one of my highly recommended is James Rolfe, the Angry Video Game Nerd. And I know he's also a big fan of Joe Bob. And I'm a really big fan of the Angry Video Game Nerd. When I was watching him, I actually started my first YouTube channel all the way back in 2009. So James Rolfe and AVGN, Cinemassacre, if you will, was like some of the first stuff that I was watching here on YouTube. And he pretty much like inspired me to kind of like do the same thing, just to kind of like start these watch-alongs. I usually do watch-alongs for like the Joe Bob stuff and also some pro wrestling stuff. So I try to include a lot of like pro wrestling stuff on my channel as well when I get the time to do them. We just actually today we finished the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix, so that's also available on my channel. But yeah, I've been watching Joe Bob ever since Monster Vision on TNT. I was born in 97, so a little bit later on, but I still pretty much grew up watching horror my entire life. It's my favorite genre. And like I said, James Rolfe has also done some stuff with Joe Bob as well. He's got some interviews and stuff with him. Joe Bob has even done some acting. But yeah, I definitely recommend the Angry Video Game Nerd and the Cinemassacre channel. Like I said, it's in my highly recommended, so very easy. Just click the link and, you know, go check him out. He does a lot of like independent films himself, and he's definitely a big horror fan as well. So I have nothing but good things to say about both Joe Bob and James Rolfe.
All slasher films are ultimately about various forms of sexual confusion, and that would be confusing as fuck. All right. Deborah Hill, the producer of Halloween, gave quite a few interviews about this movie before her untimely death in 2005. And one thing she would always say is that Laurie Strode, the Jamie Lee Curtis character, is an extremely strong woman. She would say she feared nothing, leading to a lot of people writing about how feminist the movie is. I totally disagree with that. Laurie has a healthy fear of everything. She is protective of those kids partly because she's aware of things that might be scary that the other cast members are ignoring. Deborah Hill also said the film had no nudity. So I have to wonder whether she actually ever watched her own film. There's a famous commentary track where she says, well, the nudity at the very beginning in the first scene is the only nudity in the film, and Judith Meyer's death at the beginning is the only real violence. You know, so the film is not about nudity and it's not about violence. She kept hammering these 2 points home. It's about Laurie Strode being strong. Well, it's an extremely strong performance by Jamie Lee Curtis. There's no question about that. It's an amazing performance for such a young, inexperienced actress, but it's rooted in fear, making her fear real to us so that we identify with her feeling of helplessness. Otherwise, we would think she's stupid. I don't want to do spoilers, but she does some silly things because of her fear. But Deborah Hill always said, Laurie Strode feared nothing. Really? She had to fear something. She had to fear Michael Myers, or we wouldn't fear Michael Myers, because we mostly see him through her eyes, at least in the major climactic scenes. It's one thing to hear Dr. Loomis talk about what a badass he is, but when we finally see him, we're watching him through the eyes of Laurie Strode. Anyhow, just my opinion, people. Halloween is a very simple movie. People read more into it than it deserves. Just like they read so much into that Michael Myers mask. There's really nothing there except what you project onto the mask. And did you notice what movie Laurie and Tommy are watching? The Thing, the Howard Hawks movie that John Carpenter would remake in 1982 with Kurt Russell. Not to be confused with The Thing roadside attraction on Interstate 10 in Arizona. Do people still fall for that? Do people still go to The Thing in Arizona? See The Thing, giant signs all up and down Interstate 10. Also, they killed a dog in this movie. You can't kill a dog. All right, back to the movie. That bothered me in The Hills Have Eyes, and it bothers me in this movie. I don't think they would kill a dog today if they were making this movie, would they? I don't know. Full disclosure, I actually stopped at The Thing. I couldn't resist the signs. When I was driving down Interstate 10, it's like 50, 60 miles east of Tucson. When you're standing in line to see The Thing, before you get to it, they have a woolly mammoth leg from dinosaur times. And a 1937 Rolls Royce with a stuffed Adolf Hitler in it. I guess it's the actual car that Adolf Hitler drove. Or people probably drove it for Adolf Hitler, but they have a stuffed Adolf Hitler in the car. I saw The Thing. I did see The Thing, but I cannot reveal to you what I saw. That'll cost you $5. Because I consider us part of the fraternity of show people. So we don't give that shit away. There are things here at the last drive-in that we don't reveal. Unless you give me $5.
There you see the next scene. The kids are pretty much getting ready to encounter Michael Myers, now the boogeyman, in Halloween 1978 as he's perceived. Now, I do just want to add as well, when I was growing up, I got to watch all of the classic Halloween movies, basically on television, shit like Sci-Fi and stuff like that. The Sci-Fi channel would obviously do like 31 Days of Halloween and whatnot. And I got to watch like all the original Halloween movies, basically Halloween 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, H2O, Resurrection, all on television. But when Rob Zombie did do the remake, I did go to the theater, and I did get to see Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 in the theater, and I also seen Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 in the theater, and then years later, I went to go see Halloween 2018 when they remade it, the Danny McBride version, and then also I seen Halloween Kills in the theater. I seen Halloween 2018, the remake, for my birthday, because every year for my birthday I try to see a movie. This year it's going to be Terrifier 3, of course. But I did get to see Halloween 2018 for my birthday movie. Thought it was good. In Halloween Kills, I did also see that in the theater, but I skipped Halloween Ends because at the time I was actually working at AMC Movie Theater. And I kind of just heard how bad the reviews were It was also a movie that they were gonna show on Peacock, along with the Peacock deal. If anybody has Peacock watching, you would know that we usually see Peacock for like our WWE events when we do the WWE watch-alongs and whatnot. But Peacock is actually how I watched Halloween Ends, and that movie is fucking terrible. Okay, if anybody has seen Halloween Ends, you probably can understand my disdain for it. But Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills are fairly enjoyable. They're okay.
I've always been bothered by that part where Linda, played by PJ Souls, and her boyfriend Bob drive up to the house where Annie is supposed to be babysitting, and they're drinking beer, and before they get out of the car, Bob talks about how he's going to rip Linda's clothes off, and then she's going to rip his clothes off, and then they're both going to rip Lindsay's clothes off. The 8-year-old girl. Now, I realize he's joking, but really? I mean, wouldn't there be somebody on the staff or the crew or maybe the producer who would say, guys, do we really need this joke about sexual assault on an 8-year-old girl in this movie? Anyway, Michael Myers is just keep pouring in. This is Andrew Wren of Laredo, Texas. This is Justin Raymond of Apple Valley, Minnesota. How many of these do we have? Should we be starting to get creeped out that this many people have a hobby of dressing up like Michael Myers? The child actress who plays Lindsay in the movie is Kyle Richards, who ends up years later on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. But at the time, she didn't really understand horror movies. So when she went to the premiere, she got freaked out so much that she says she had to sleep in her mom's bed until the age of 15. She was also in Tobe Hooper's second film after the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the one. It has many titles. I know it is either Legend of the Bayou or Eaten Alive. She was in that film when she was just 6 years old. She says it was a bad experience. She says she hates method actors. Her acting mentor was Dick Sargent of Bewitched fame, Darren in Bewitched. Man, I thought he was doing method acting on Bewitched. They just shatter my illusions, But the thing that makes Halloween scary, and I'm not the first to say this, obviously, is the music, the theme. I'm not sure it would have been a hit without that music. John Carpenter's dad was a music professor at Bowling Green State University, so Carpenter picked up a lot from him. He was able to compose himself on a synthesizer, and he did that piano theme, which is not that original. I think Carpenter even admits he got the inspiration from Tubular Bells in The Exorcist, with maybe a little stuff also from Suspiria, the stuff written by Goblin, the band Goblin. Suspiria came out 1 year before Halloween. But the music gives the film an energy when Michael is just lurking around and stalking and not really doing anything. All right, what else we got? The film made either 40 million or 70 million. I've heard both numbers on a budget of $325,000. And of course, there have been 10 other Halloween movies since then. They weren't real picky about who made Halloween sequels. I think they just had a rate card. Want to do a Halloween? That'll be $500,000. Okay.
Now, obviously, they made Halloween 1 on a very low budget, about $300K. Went on to the box office to make over $1 million. So very successful. But I do remember John Carpenter originally saying he did not expect the Halloween franchise to go on for like 5-10 movies. So after the second one, he pretty much just sold the rights to the film, and that's where you get all the other directors after John Carpenter making movies in the Halloween universe. Now, I have heard the rumor that one of my favorite directors, Quentin Tarantino, was actually supposed to direct a Halloween movie. He was actually, I believe it was Halloween 4 that they wanted Quentin Tarantino to do, but he got a hold of the script and he didn't really agree with the script, or I think it was just the Weinstein Company in general was just like giving him a tough time with the movie. It was like a lot of strange things, but there is a lot of backstory to Quentin Tarantino almost making a Halloween movie, which definitely would have been fucking interesting in my book. I definitely would have watched it, but never came to reality, never actually happened. Yeah, Wes Craven, he pretty much felt the same way about the Freddy movies. Really the only reoccurring person to ever exist in the Nightmare on Elm Street universe is Robert Englund, playing the role of Freddy, obviously. I even actually enjoyed the remake Nightmare on Elm Street. I know a lot of people kind of dislike that movie for their own reasons, but in terms of a remake, I thought the Nightmare on Elm Street remake was fairly good. I know it didn't have Robert Englund as Freddy. My favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and I guess you could call it Friday the 13th as well, is actually Freddy versus Jason. Interestingly enough, the first time where I ever went to a drive-in movie theater, I got to see a double feature, and they were playing Freddy vs. Jason, which is quite frankly my favorite horror movie of all time, if not my favorite horror movie of all time, and also Jeepers Creepers 2. So it was a double feature. That was like the only time I've ever been to the drive-in. I snuck in because I was fairly young at the time. My mom snuck me in and got to see Freddy vs. Jason and also Jeepers Creepers 2. But Freddy vs. Jason is the last time that Robert Englund would ever play Freddy Krueger. Still an amazing movie. And Wes Craven, I know he basically did one. I'm not too sure about the other films. I think he just directed the first movie, Nightmare on Elm Street, and I know they got him to come back for the final Nightmare, which was like New Nightmare. Freddy's New Nightmare. So those are the ones that I know that he definitely directed. Yeah, Freddy versus Jason was definitely incredible, man. I remember growing up, people wanted to see a sequel so bad, but it's like that ending was kind of perfect in a way where they just left it up to the fans' kind of perception. And who actually won? Was it Freddy? Was it Jason? We let the fans decide, you know what I mean? But Robert Englund has pretty much said now he never is going to come back and do a Freddy role again because he's just kind of too old. And I do remember fans being kind of disappointed that Kane Hodder wasn't Jason and Freddy versus Jason, but they were trying to go with like a different kind of Jason, a more bulkier, a more heavier kind of actor. It did work for the movie, but it would have been even more fucking crazy just to see Robert Englund versus Kane Hodder and Freddy versus Jason. Um, and yeah, the original Nightmare on Elm Street is definitely a classic. I think the Nightmare on Elm Street movies definitely hold up to this day still. I know they're more like comicky and a little bit more gimmicky with all the dark humor that Freddy throws in there, but that's kind of just the overall Freddy Krueger character in general. That's kind of what separates him from other slashers like Michael and Jason, Leatherface, shit like that. He's got humor, you know?
Okay. There have been at least 7 Michael Myerses. Nick Castle in this movie, he invented the head tilt. You know, that thing. You know, he played in a band with John Carpenter in college. Dick Warlock, the stunt coordinator in part 2. Don Shanks in Halloween 5. Chris Durand in Halloween H2O, James Jude Courtney in Halloween 2018. These are mostly stuntmen. Tyler Main in the ones that nobody can remember. I see these guys at the horror conventions, and it's always, okay, which one are you? Anyway, we're getting to the heart of the movie right here. We're getting to the part that made all those sequels and remakes and reboots possible. So let's just roll the film. Go. They have those polls online. Who's scarier? Michael Myers, Freddy, Jason, or Leatherface? And then they have actual debates about who is the better serial killer, you know? Meanwhile, real serial killers, they're always described as charming. You know, Ted Bundy, charming. The Satanist guy in San Quentin, what's his name? Charming. The real guys don't walk around carrying a chainsaw. You know what I mean? They wear frilly French shirts and Prada sunglasses. I don't know what they wear, but whatever they wear, you buy it at Brooks Brothers. You don't buy it at Ace Hardware. You know what I mean?
And since you actually made a comment about him, Space Ghost, I will say Wes Craven is definitely one of my favorite horror directors too. I was very upset when I found out that he passed just after he got to do Scream 4. I'm a big fan of the Scream franchise as well. I love what they've been doing with Scream recently, how they incorporate Jenna Ortega and stuff like that. But I absolutely loved Wes Craven as a horror director. Loved his films like Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes, I believe he also did. Me personally, my favorite style of horror is slasher films first, and I love cannibal movies, so those are like my top like horror stuff. I hate shit when it's all about like ghost and paranormal activity. I think the ghost stuff is like really played out nowadays. Like anything where it's like The Nun or like Annabelle and fucking The Conjuring and shit like that, it's all basically just the same movie to me. I really don't like the horror genre when it's just like about ghosts. Like they just have so many fucking Conjuring movies now, and that stuff is kind of stupid to me. But I do love the the slasher stuff. The slasher genre to me is kind of like a rare beloved genre in a way. Ah, they're your favorite producers. Nice, nice. See, me, I grew up Italian and Irish. So the thing with me is, if you know about me, you would know like, oh shit, the boogeyman's throwing down. But if you know about me, like my mom, she loved horror movies, and she's actually the one that like got me going with like horror stuff. When I was growing up, me and my mom, we would fucking rent movies from Blockbuster, watch horror movies on TV, go to the theaters. One of the horror franchises that I really love is Saw. I really love the Saw franchise just because I think that's like one of the last great horror franchises, honestly. People will always say that Saw is like torture porn, but to me it's not. It's actually detective. It's like a murder detective kind of movie, and I love that stuff too when it comes to horror, because my favorite superhero is actually Batman, and they say, Batman's the world's greatest detective, and obviously Batman is dealing with serial killers and murderers all the time, so, it's not like I have anything against Marvel, but I do kind of put DC above Marvel sometimes because DC Detective Comics, the Saw franchise are kind of like detective murder mystery movies to me. But for me, I grew up Italian and Irish. My dad absolutely hated horror movies, so I never really got to watch a lot of horror movies with my dad. I remember one time he took me to a horror movie because, like I said, I'm a pro wrestling fan. And this is about like 2006. And I don't know if you're aware of the wrestler Kane. But Kane was making a horror movie at the time, and it was called See No Evil. And he actually took me to go see that because, again, he knew how much of a horror fan I was. So he said, do you want to go see the horror movie with Kane? Of course I want to go see the fucking horror movie with Kane. Are you kidding me? So my favorite directors growing up was always Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino. But when it comes to the horror genre, like I said, I mean, there's so many that I appreciate. I love Wes Craven, John Carpenter, Rob Zombie. I think another great horror director, honestly, who doesn't get a lot of credit is Eli Roth. Eli Roth is really fucking great. Eli, again, has worked hand in hand with Quentin Tarantino. I know that Tarantino actually produced an Eli Roth horror movie specifically, that was Hostel for Eli Roth. And again, Eli Roth has kind of done some slasher stuff and some cannibal stuff as well, which I really love. So I definitely love the Eli Roth stuff. Yeah, Kane and Undertaker, man. Yeah, Kane was in See No Evil. I think they had him in the first one and the second one. But yeah, I got to See No Evil in the theaters in 2006 when that came out. Kane honestly should have done more fucking horror movies instead of trying to become a mayor. I don't know. Maybe his career would have went a little different. I don't know, man. But it would be cool to see Undertaker do some horror movies as well. And the funny thing is, my dad, he hated horror movies and he hated pro wrestling, but he would take me to go see pro wrestling events. And I actually remember one time asking him, because he thought the whole thing, he's one of those people like the old school mentality where it was like pro wrestling is fake and shit. I obviously don't feel that way at all about it. I actually did wrestling training at a school here in Lackawanna, New York. One of the wrestlers I trained with is Daniel Garcia, who right now is in All Elite Wrestling, AEW. I also trained with Aiden Backlund, who is Bob Backlund's nephew. So I have a different appreciation for wrestling than he ever did. But I just remember asking him one time, out of everybody that's here, who is your favorite wrestler? And he actually told me The Undertaker. And if you knew my dad passed away in 2012 when I was 14. So my dad is no longer with us. He fucking died a long time ago, like I said, when I was 14 years old. But he definitely had a personality that reminded me a lot of a combination of Robert De Niro and The Undertaker. So that would kind of sum him up in one person. But my favorite directors was always Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese. So I absolutely love their movies. Like I said, I know Quentin Tarantino has worked hand in hand with Eli Roth. Definitely recommend some Eli Roth movies if you've never watched those. I know more recently he did Thanksgiving, which is like a holiday slasher. I thought Thanksgiving was actually good. I mean, shit, I'd rather watch that than any fucking Conjuring movie nowadays. And the reason that Quentin Tarantino doesn't want to make horror movies anymore, I actually tried to do a long time ago, about a year ago, I tried to do a watch along to Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof, which is one of my favorite horror movies that he did. But of course, the YouTube copyright wouldn't let me put it on the channel, and we couldn't do the watch along. But the reason Quentin Tarantino doesn't want to do horror movies anymore is because it kind of flopped at the box office. I remember he did it with Robert Rodriguez as a double feature kind of for the Grindhouse movie, and he did Death Proof and Robert Rodriguez did Planet Terror, which are both great movies in the Grindhouse set. But he basically, I mean, he had a great idea for a horror movie. Like I said, my favorite directors when they do horror stuff, like Martin Scorsese, I love when he did Cape Fear. Cape Fear is a fucking phenomenal movie with De Niro. And then Quentin Tarantino, like I said, he almost did a Halloween movie, but he went on to do his own kind of style of horror where it was in Death Proof. The reason I love Death Proof is because there's like two sides to the coin. The first half of the movie is shot basically from the killer's perspective. And the second half of the movie is basically a revenge movie shot from like the girl's perspective. So it's a really interesting movie if you haven't seen it. I wish we could put it on the channel, but YouTube won't really let me do it right now. But I do remember Tarantino saying, he doesn't really want to do any more horror movies because people didn't really go to see his horror movies, which kind of sucks because I think that they were great. But we're at the end of Halloween 1 now, 1978. So we are going to see Joe Bob's final closing thoughts here.
We just watched 20 of the most famous minutes in horror, and I have two observations about it. One is that Laurie Strode, who Deborah Hill always said was the symbol of feminism in horror, gets control of Michael Myers' knife twice and throws it down on the floor both times, out of fear, out of not wanting to touch violence, out of not wanting to touch what he has touched. I totally get that. I believe it's understandable, but she leaves it there so he can attack her again. Not exactly a commando warrior. And the reason she's saved from death is that a man shows up with a gun. So this thing about feminism is just crazy. She's the final girl. She gives a great performance, but the performance would be nothing without the sheer terror that she exhibits, especially when he's punching through that flimsy louvered door to the closet. All right, I want to show two more Halloween movies tonight. Gee, which one should we show?
Three.
Oh, gosh. See anything you like?
I can't see much, actually. So, hold on.
Oh, you kind of rewrote the script there because now you're Laurie Strode.
I made it more feminist.
Okay. All right, look what I found, though. Even you dress up like Michael Myers.
I do.
What was this for?
John Carpenter had a signing, and I went to look pretty for him.
And this one, was Michael Myers ever in a blue jumpsuit with platform boots?
I added my own accessories.
And what did John think about it?
Not much.
All right. Well, we can't show Halloween 3.
Why? It's so much better than even the one we just showed.
Really? No Michael Myers, no Dr. Loomis, no Laurie Strode, the silly plot about exploding Halloween masks.
It's great. It's wonderful. And it has dreamy Tom Atkins in it.
I know you've been agitating for Halloween 3 and making my life a living hell because I have to answer questions about it everywhere I go. But this is Michael Myers night. We're trying to show the progressive psychosis of Michael Myers.
We are?
No, I just thought of that, though. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But actually, let's go ahead and talk about that. Why is Michael Myers crazy? What happened to him?
I don't actually consider him crazy.
All right, he's crazy, okay? Let's ask people to send in their theories, though. Let's collect some how Michael Myers went crazy theories for the next movie.
You guys have heard my theories in this video, and like I said, I don't actually think that Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is a bad movie. I know it's different, I know it doesn't have Michael Myers in it, but sometimes different is good, okay? There's movies that sometimes try to expand the thought, if you will, of the universe. So, like I said, Halloween 3 for me, its entire purpose is kind of setting up the Silver Shamrock. And like I said, it's never been confirmed, my theories, but maybe one day I'll get the chance to express them to a wider audience, and we'll see if people agree or not.
Will do, boss.
All right.
We're already getting them because you said that.
How do you know we're already getting them?
Because anything you ask the drive-in mutants to do, they do right away.
Okay, well, I will not abuse that power. What do we got in the mailbag department?
People have started sending us Last Drive-In merch.
Merch?
Oh, yeah. Puzzles, artwork, shirts. Oh, here's a guy who made Last Drive-In trading cards. One of you and one of me.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can trade my card to you and you can trade your card to me because there's only 2 trading cards. And because is there an Ernie card or a Brennan card or a Yuki card?
Not yet.
Okay, limited trading possibilities with these.
Those are from Stephen Borkowski of Deer Park, New York. He normally does Married with Children merch, which is how we found him. He made this card of you.
Oh, this is a Married with Children trading card?
Yeah.
When I was on Married with Children?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
He's at marriedwithchildrenfan.com.
Okay. That's in Long Island, Deer Park. I will personally thank Stephen when I do my show out there in March. I'll be out there.
You're going to Deer Park?
I'm going to Huntington, a couple towns over from Deer Park.
Next. Oh, remember when we showed A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night and you talked about Pussy Stretcher?
Yeah, not only did I talk about Pussy Stretcher, but it started trending on Twitter, #Pussy Stretcher.
That was awesome. Well, someone actually sent you a Pussy Stretcher.
Oh my God, I think I remember this. I don't know where this...
I don't know where it came from. I think you sent it to me.
I'm afraid to open it. I don't... Oh, it's the executive Pussy Stretcher. And yeah, here it is. It's a stretcher. It's a miniature stretcher. Place injured cat here. Okay. We have the greatest fans ever. And I'm remembering this. Somebody handed this to me at the Retro Invasion weekend in Cleveland. I don't remember who it was, which is bad. So if you gave me a pussy stretcher, write to me at joebob@joebobbriggs.com, and I will send you an appropriate gift in return, because everybody needs a pussy stretcher, and I did not have one.
That is very true.
Okay.
Okay, so next we have 2 card pumpkins. One with your face that was sent in recently, carved by Ian Fetterman of Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania.
Is this it?
That is it.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I know,
okay.
Right?
Lehigh Valley, that's not a place.
That's what it says, Lehigh Valley.
That's a Chamber of Commerce thing. Are people embarrassed to be from the great steel city of Bethlehem? Anyway, this is fabulous. I love this. He obviously used the artwork that they use on the Last Drive-In t-shirts, which is, that's Justin Osborne of St. Louis who does that artwork. He's great.
This next one is a pumpkin from actually a couple of years ago with me on it.
Oh.
I brought him to be a companion to yours. This one is carved by Alex Werr, who calls himself the Pumpkin Geek in Sacramento.
Wow. Yours is a lot more compelling than mine is.
He used a picture from when I did my naked zombie tramp cosplay.
People dress up like naked zombie tramps. Is that a thing?
I mean, yeah, it's like huge. Everyone's doing it.
What planet are we on right now? Zombie tramps. All right. Aren't all zombies naked? Because they're in graves and then they come up out of the graves and they're...
Have you ever watched Walking Dead?
Okay.
No. So one more thing. Don't look. We're getting it set up for you.
Okay.
Don't look. Don't
All
look.
right. All right. Looking over here.
Almost ready?
Can I look?
No.
All right.
You can look.
All right. Now you can look.
All right.
Hi, I'm Joe Bob Briggs. You know what burns my bacon? Darcy the mail girl. She is so annoying.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? Well, I have to admit, it does look exactly like me. So.
I think so too. It's from Lori and Danny Fusello of My Best Bean Studio in Rockland, Maine.
Did we get a lot of stuff like this? That's amazing.
Like this. They're all unique as hell. Yeah, you get a lot of fan love. There's a Last Drive-In fanzine.
I know about the fanzine. That's Jennifer Manriquez of Fort Worth. She does a great job with the
She
fanzine.
does. And a Last Drive-In blog.
That's Laura Bierman of Nashville, great writer. Yeah, I've seen that.
And a comic book cover for every episode of The Last Drive-In.
Oh, yeah, that's Tom Denton of Columbus, Ohio. He does these. He's amazing. Yeah, there's like, how many of these now? 13 of these, I think?
And he's ad-libbing too. He's making ones that don't exist, like you and Spinguli have one now.
Okay. The Last Drive-In fans, better known as the Mutant Army.
Mutant Family.
All right. Well, I like Mutant Army better because they're always showing up at every show I do. I'm meeting in person half the people who watch this show, and I have never felt this close to an audience in my life. The previous shows I did on TNT and the Movie Channel, they just went out into a black hole. So this has been great. Okay, we got to move on or they're going to kill us. But coming up after the break, yet another Halloween movie.
Halloween 3.
No, it's not Halloween 3. So people complain when I make jokes about Catholics or the Irish or Polish people or women or blondes or whatever. So I'm going to tell one about my own people.
Okay. So that is our Halloween special. Joe Bob's Halloween Hootenanny. Tonight he watched Halloween 1, 1978, the original John Carpenter film. Thank you for hanging out with me, especially Space Ghost here, leaving some nice comments, having a chat for a while. You have a good night too, bro. Hopefully you have a safe night. Enjoy your Halloween season. Spooky season is upon us. Definitely appreciate your viewership and your support. Thank you so much. Means a lot to me. So like I said, everybody, there's the outfit for today. The Halloween shirt, Michael Myers. You can see right there. There it is. We got the saber pants on today. There's the outfit check for you. So thank you so much, anybody who did stop by and checked out the channel. Checked out our watch along tonight for Joe Bob's Halloween Hootenanny. Next time we stream is most likely going to be on Monday, I believe, because tomorrow is college football Saturday. I'm going to be watching some games. Sunday, the Buffalo Bills are playing the Houston Texans, so you know I got to watch my Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen versus Stephon Diggs. So Monday, we will most likely be streaming again, another Halloween special. Tonight, I'm going to be watching the Oregon Ducks play, so that is why I tried to do these streams a little bit early. Game is going to be starting in like 4 hours. So I'm going to be watching the Oregon Ducks tonight, Saturday, college football, and then Sunday, my Buffalo Bills are playing. Let's go, Bills. So thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for your support. Your viewership means a lot to me. Like I said, we'll be back with another stream on Monday. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves. Until next time, peace, God.